All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order on this February 1st. Let's do just a very quick round of introductions since we still have some new people. I'm Rebecca Camberling. I am the chair, and I live over in the, I don't know what this neighborhood's called right this second. I live this way, west, and I've been on this committee for a couple of years, and that's all I can remember right now. So, who's next? Tyler, Chase, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, thanks, Rebecca. Tyler Ryerson, staff liaison for our Urban Renewal Agency. And Dan, just a quick note, Dan Turk will be joining us, but I told him he didn't have to be on right away as he will be doing a presentation a little bit. And he's a project manager for the city.
And I'm Chase Landry. I help out Tyler Ryerson.
And I'm going to go next so I can mute myself. I'm Kelly Perkins. I work for the city. I support Tyler and Chase, all things URAC.
I'm just going to go around my screen. So Scott, you're next.
Scott Winter, Planning Commissioner. Been on this committee for a while too.
Paula.
Paula Cottrell. I live in Cedar Mills area, and I've been on the committee for a couple of years.
Paige.
Hi, Paige Lerwick, Vose resident, and this is my second year on the committee.
Alan.
Hi, Alan Kennedy with TBF&R and Special Districts.
Eric.
Eric Lear, I live in the Five Oaks Triple Creek neighborhood, and like Paula, this is just starting my third year in the committee.
Andy.
Andy Allen, also a Vose resident, and this is my second year on the committee.
Josh.
I'm Josh Carrillo. This is my first year in URAC. I live about 2 floors below Paula in Cedar Mill.
Nathan.
Good evening, everyone. Nathan here with the Denny Woodford Raleigh West neighborhood, rolling on to the second year with this committee.
Oswaldo.
Thank you, Oswaldo Bernal, and first year member, Greenway neighborhood, big time Barcelona fan. Just wanted to say that in front of Alan.
And Jerome. Oh, you're muted.
I know I'm muted. There we go. I'm just not very coordinated, that's all. Jerome Yeoman, I live in Five Oaks Triple Creek as well, and I have an office right downtown in the creek side, right alongside the creek. So I love what we're up to. Look forward to being part of it. Starting my second month.
And then I see that we have a staff member, Steve, on as well.
Good evening. I'll just say hi really quickly. My name is Steve Regner. I'm a planner with the city of Beaverton, and I'm presenting an item tonight. I'll do a more thorough introduction when it's my turn.
Awesome. I do not see any visitors tonight. If there is anybody who's a visitor, raise your hand. Speak now. I do not see any. Okay, no visitors. So then we move on to back to Steve with his downtown design project update.
All right, I'm back on. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. My name is Steve Regner. I'm a senior planner with the city of Beaverton. I see some familiar faces and some faces that aren't familiar to me. So a little bit about myself. I have been with the city for almost 8 years. Working in the planning division, splitting my time between current planning, which does development review, and long-range planning, which does policy development. I'm here tonight to talk about the Downtown Design Project, which is a long-range planning project looking at rethinking about how downtown Beaverton can evolve. And the end goal was to adopt new development code amendments to guide building and property design in the downtown area. It's a pretty big project, but I'm going to kind of go over the high notes here. Some of you on this committee have heard portions of the spiel before, so thanks for bearing with me. And for the new folks, going to keep it at a high level just so we can kind of touch on the big points, but there will be time at the end for questions and conversation about anything I said or maybe didn't say. I'd love to hear what your guys' reactions are, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's coming next. So the Downtown Design Project has been going on for a couple of years now. It actually started, I'll say fall of 2017. And its goal really was pulling from the community vision's goal of having a more vibrant downtown. In the community vision, there were a couple, actually a lot of different ways, kind of action items, but this project focused really on two of those action items. And one is to remove regulatory obstacles from desired development in downtown. And second is to promote quality design that adds to downtown's character and meets the community's expectations. The main deliverable was to update our development code, and that is what guides land development in the city. And that process just wrapped up actually, and the development code was adopted by council in November and became effective in January. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over a little bit about what we did and what changes we made to the code. So like I said, this project started in October of 2017, and the first year we spent researching and designing and doing public engagement, working on something called the Urban Design Framework. And that's really kind of like a guidebook or a roadmap to inform us and help the city understand how downtown can evolve to meet those goals. It's it's like 150 page document. There's analysis, lots of alternatives analysis, economic analysis, but to get down to the brass tacks, it really kind of boils down to these two images here. One is a list of design principles. These are short statements, abbreviated here even more, about what it is we need to do to create a more vibrant downtown. So this is creating, allowing for a mix of uses, allowing development intensity, prioritizing pedestrian activity, things like that, to make sure that downtown is really a place for people. And the image on the right is kind of a geographic analysis, understanding what character areas exist or could exist in downtown, how people travel between those character areas, and how we can better emphasize where downtown is through gateways. As part of the development code, which we started working on right after we adopted the urban design framework in fall of 2018, was working on new zoning districts. And zoning is what regulates land development through height, setbacks, density, and floor area ratios, as well as uses. Because it's a downtown area where it's intended to be broadly mixed use, that was maintained. But we did tweak the height and the density and the setback rules in most cases to allow for taller, denser development. And again, to move regulatory barriers out of the way that didn't make sense for building styles and best practices today. So this is kind of a closer look of the zoning map. Let's see if I can turn on my little laser pointer. There we go. So for reference, the round in City Hall is right here, and we have the Beaverton Transit Center. Restaurant Row is right about here, and of course the library and City Park right there. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the zones, but really the big takeaway is the area in orange, which is the RCBC Beaverton Central Zone, is the area where the tallest, densest buildings are allowed and frankly expected, because that's really where our transit is focused. We have 2 Max stops and a West Station, and that's where our densest, tallest buildings should be. And as you move away from that area, buildings get a little bit shorter, a little less dense, but still relatively dense for the city, and a broad mix of uses, allowing for that walkable, livable neighborhood that the community is really asking for. In addition to the zoning, we also have a whole new set of design standards. These were completely written from whole cloth. We have existing rules. We pushed those aside. The rest of them still apply citywide, but for downtown, we started at square one and really built from the ground up. And they're broken up into building design and site design rules. Again, not going to go into every single one of these, but you can kind of get a flavor for what it is we're focusing on here. So how do you mass and articulate a building so that's interesting and isn't too monolithic? How are facade designs done to make sure they're interesting to pedestrians? How do we incorporate open space? How do we make sure that historic preservation is still acknowledged? On the site design side, how do we make sure that buildings are properly fronting the streets? How do we make sure that the space between the building and the sidewalk, the setback area, is designed properly? How do we do landscaping and parking? So there's a pretty wide swath of topics that this code touches on here. And a couple things we really wanted to talk about was how do we, make it not easier for developers to build, but to eliminate things that don't make sense, and how can we push them towards designs that the community has expressed an interest in seeing. And a lot of that was learned through a series of open houses and online surveys and focus groups to really understand when the community says a more vibrant downtown, what exactly it is they're looking for. One of the things we really wanted to focus on as we figured out our kind of our building design rules was that we weren't shoving all of the designers to the same direction. Because we operate and we're in the state of Oregon, there's some very specific design rules about having a very specific set of design standards as one route to go. So we had to be actually pretty specific in some of our design rules, and we wanted to be really careful that we didn't end up promoting one architectural style or one design option to make sure, so we have this kind of eclectic downtown, which really kind of enjoy today. So I only share this slide because we had an architecture firm do a mock-up of a couple different building styles to really make sure that a variety of architectural styles could be accomplished while still meeting our design rules. So you can see in the upper left, we've kind of got a contemporary clean lines design. On the right, something very modern and sleek with a lot of glass and metal. And on the bottom, something a little bit more traditional with emphasized cornices and step back upper floors. All of these buildings can be built in this code today. So we really didn't want to push towards one design solution. We really wanted to leave it to be flexible for the designers to figure out what works best for them and to make sure that downtown in 20 years doesn't all look exactly the same. We wanted to avoid the cookie cutter style. So our code was very intentionally looking to allow for creativity while still following state law. We really emphasized rules on ground floor design in a walkable neighborhood. It's that first 20, 30 feet of a building facade that is really critical, because that you as a pedestrian walking by, that's what you engage with. That first, second floor is really what you can see the most of. So making sure there's a lot of glazing, weather protection, primary entrances that are properly scaled. Those are all critical elements that our code now speaks to that our old code probably didn't do as good a job of. We also talk about, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, what happens between the building and the sidewalk. Again, what is this engagement for the pedestrian walking down the street? And so our rules are a little bit more context sensitive than what we had before. On the left is a version of a main street where it is commercial first floor. And what we require is for most of that, when you have the back of sidewalk to the building, most of that is to be hardscape. So some kind of sidewalk, concrete, brick, something like that. That one, makes the sidewalk wider, more places to walk. Two, places for outdoor seating. And three, allows people to window shop. They can walk right up to the window and see what's being sold, or they can see people eating. And it really kind of adds to the vibrancy of a commercial district. On the right side, we have the opposite, where there's ground floor residential, and you really want the opposite of that. You want landscaping, you want a buffer, you want some screening. So our code really gets a little bit more specific about what it's like between the sidewalk and the building, depending on what uses are on that ground floor, being more context sensitive. We also took a swing at updating our historic preservation rules, which were last really updated. Well, updated might not be the right word. They were adopted in the 1980s, and I'm not sure we've really touched them much since. The big challenge that we identified with our historic preservation rules is that we have an existing historic overlay right here. So this is Watson and First and Broadway. And our old version of the code said, if you're going to develop anywhere within this area, you need to go to Planning Commission, and you have to prove that your building is not going to detract from the historic character of the district. And that's a really tricky thing to actually quantify. Downtown Beaverton, not only the historic district, but all of the downtown area has really eclectic architectural style built at different periods with different styles. So our historic district really doesn't have an overriding architectural style. So what we did instead was to say, okay, we can do away with that rule. Let's instead identify each of the historic landmarks that we want to preserve in the historic district, and say, if you build next door to that, there are some specific design rules that you need to follow. So here's the Katie building at Farmington and Watson, where Ex Novo is. There are a couple of very distinct architectural elements that in fact are called out in a historic inventory. So there's the big cornice at the top, a horizontal datum line between the first and second floors, and the upper edge transom follows along this line here. So if you were to build next door, you would need to incorporate a couple of these design ideas, but that's it. And otherwise, you can build whatever architectural style you want. You know that you are meeting these specified design rules. You have a lot more confidence as a developer or an architect that you're meeting this rule, but still maintaining some historic elements as you develop. So we're really looking forward to that now being in place and seeing a little bit more confidence in the development community to take a risk on downtown Beaverton. A tool that we have now incorporated is the street typology map. And really what the idea behind this is identifying key streets in downtown that we really want to focus our energy on. This whole area is over 300 acres. That's massive. That's way too big to actually call a downtown. No one's downtown's really that big. But for regulatory purposes, this is kind of where we're operating. But the idea is to say, these are key streets where energy is really critical. We really want to focus and create these corridors of vibrancy. So what our code now says is that when you develop, you need to orient towards the more important street. Our old code said every street is equally important. And when you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing. So we really stepped away from that model and are now saying on certain streets, this is where you face your building. This is where you put your massing. If you have to do a service parking lot, put it somewhere else. We really wanted to create these like continuous street walls, this area of energy. And this starts with Hall and Watson, these two key corridors running north-south through downtown. This was a transportation network identified in the first phase of our project as the loop. And Dan will be talking about the loop later this evening, so I won't steal his thunder. Suffice it to say, it's really important to downtown, and our development code and our capital improvement projects are really intertwined to bring this thing to life. So saying Hall and Watson are really important. Same with Crescent, where you have the round and the PRCA going up. That's a really important street to focus on. Same with historic Broadway. There's a couple of areas of historic Broadway that have really great street presence and feel, but then in a lot of cases you look across the street and it's not quite there yet. So this code is saying, hey, what's going on one side of the street's really great. When properties across the street redevelop, they're going to match that level of vibrancy and pedestrian engagement. And then finally, First Street is another key street. It connects Lombard to Beaverton High School. It intersects with Watson, is a key leg of Restaurant Row. So really what we've got here is a couple of the key streets highlighted that are really emphasized for success and energy. And once these streets really get going, that's when energy can really radiate out further and further and help downtown grow. But we have to start somewhere, and these are the key streets that the code identifies. Connected to that are our active ground floor use rules. You'll notice these areas in blue and orange. You'll see a lot of overlap between the last map I showed and highlighted and this map here, where you have Hall and Watson highlighted, First Street, historic Broadway. And what these rules really talk about is not design, but actually use of the building, specifically on the ground floor. As you walk down the street, what's happening on the ground floor is really important. And to know that there is more to explore really keeps people curious, really keeps people exploring. So while in our old version of the code, we didn't make any distinction of what could be in any given tenant space, it was just kind of an across the board rule allowance, and you could have anything on First, anything on Hall and Watson, which can sometimes lead to lost opportunities. Our economic development team has done a great job of kind of curating Restaurant Row. But there are some lower activity uses, while still appropriate in downtown, might be a lost opportunity to have another use that is more vibrant and draws more foot traffic. So we really broke it down to three big kind of hierarchies or types. The first are these areas in orange that are used pretty selectively on First and Watson, Broadway, and Rose Beige near the Arts Center. This is type A. And this means that along these streets, ground floor tenant spaces facing the street have to be occupied by a pretty high energy, high foot traffic driving use. So think retail, restaurants, and bars and coffee shops, or personal services like a barber shop or a hair salon. These really drive a lot of foot traffic and do really good when they're grouped together. Expanding out further, these areas in dark blue, which kind of extend Hall and Watson, Second, you have Watson here, all the way up to Center. That's a broader commercial allowance. So everything in type A, the restaurant and retail and personal services, but it also opens it up to things like offices and other professional services, medical clinics, dentists. So starting to get that more mixed use, still driving foot traffic, but not nearly as vibrant as the type A orange. So that starts to spread out a little bit more. And then finally, the streets with the light blue dashes, on those frontages on the ground floor, all those uses I've covered in both the orange and the blue are allowed, but we also permit ground floor residential units as long as those units have their primary entrance facing the street. So you think about a porch or a stoop or a terrace, serving these ground floor units allows for greater interaction with the street. You can go out, have a cup of coffee, say hi to your neighbor. Those really are an opportunity to engage with the public realm a little bit more from a use perspective. This is the only provision of the code that's not actually in effect yet. You probably were thinking, boy, that type A, all those businesses, restaurants, retail, personal services, they're not doing so great right now. COVID has really hit them really hard. So what we did is actually took these rules and adopted them in a separate process. And these rules actually won't go into effect until July 1st. So while the rest of the code is in place, we delayed the adoption of these rules to hopefully allow COVID to get a little bit more under control. We are keeping an eye on vaccine rollout, and we are communicating with our economic development team to understand how downtown businesses are doing. And if things don't go as well as we're hoping, we can push the effective date a little bit further down into later in 2021. But our goal is really to keep this on that July 1st date to get these use rules into place and really finish out the code as envisioned and as adopted by City Council. A couple things on use. Downtown allows for a broad mix of uses, and that didn't change. But we did make a couple of targeted choices. First is hotels. In the old version of the code, if you were north of Canyon, you could build a hotel without really any challenge. South of Canyon, you had to go through a conditional use permit, which is like a compatibility test. And we didn't really see that as necessary, given that all of downtown is kind of envisioned as a mixed use area. So we moved on from that. Research was not allowed in downtown. We saw that as really missing as an employment sector. So we're permitting it with some kind of good neighbor rules. No outdoor storage, no outdoor operation of heavy machinery, to make sure that they're a good neighbor to an urban environment. Parks and community gardens, we heard more than anything, we need more green spaces in downtown. And in the old version of the code, parks needed a conditional use permit, that compatibility test. And community gardens were, I think, unintentionally banned. They weren't allowed. So we streamlined that. Parks and community gardens are outright permitted. We got rid of some barriers there. And finally, vehicle sales. That was a big focus at the end of our project. Our old code was relatively lenient on vehicle sales. We see them, and the community saw them as not adding to pedestrian vibrancy, not adding to walkability. So staff proposed that vehicle dealerships should be prohibited, as well as vehicle service. Those are like gas stations, tire repair, oil changes. And City Council adopted those rules. So those are now prohibited. Any ones that are existing can still operate, but you won't see any new ones under this version of the code. I'm going to talk a little bit about parking implementation, and that's going to be the end of my presentation. Parking is super critical for an urban area. It's expensive to build and it takes up space, but also it's critical to how we function. Beaverton is still a suburban community and people still majority drive to downtown. So getting that balance right is really tricky. We do have a downtown parking team that is doing a much more comprehensive approach, but we wanted to take a couple of steps to be a foundation to build on that. The old version of our parking code in downtown broke things up into 5 different districts. The blue districts had really reduced parking ratios, and then the green districts had higher ratios. District 5 right here along Highway 217, that makes sense. That's a pretty auto-oriented area. This is where Trader Joe's and Fred Meyer is. That's pretty auto-oriented and probably always will be, at least for a long time, given its proximity to the highway. But the green areas with the number 4, less so, especially this area here near the Beaverton Transit Center. That's a great opportunity for dense development with less vehicle reliance. So we modified the parking rules and instead condensed areas 1 through 4. And so now all this area in blue now has that reduced parking ratio. And this unlocks a lot of development potential, including 85 acres near the Beaverton Transit Center. So we're really excited to see not only what this rule change is going to bring, but also the more comprehensive plan that the city's working on for urban parking. And we didn't touch the area in green. Like I said, that's Highway 217 adjacent. We'll deal with that in the future. So finally, what's next? Code tracking. We are really proud of the code. A lot of people helped out with it and we're really pleased it's now ready to go. But we know it's not perfect. So we have set up a process to track all of the feedback we've gotten, whether it's a question at the counter or over the phone, or when we take projects through the system. We want to track and see how well the code's working. And in a year, we're going to return to that checklist and see what's meeting our expectations and what's not, and go through another amendment process to address the issues that aren't really meeting our expectations. There's also a series of implementation projects. Dan will talk to you about the loop. But there's also a downtown streetscape plan that'll kick off this year. And there's a lot more to come as we figure out our work plan and prioritize what we want to do next. And then finally, of course, code administration. This code is now in effect. So now the planners, including myself, get to administer this code, work with property owners, work with developers, work with business owners to help them navigate these new rules and help us all meet the expectations of the community. So with that, that ends my presentation. Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody from the committee has. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you all.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you were looking at the different building uses and changing some of those, did you also look not just at parking, but at traffic and the impact on traffic it's going to have?
We did to some degree. We understood that this is a mixed use area, that this is an area with a lot of good transit access. As far as the uses allowed, really the only one we added is the kind of research and development. So otherwise, all of the uses were already allowed. So when we went through the process and did a review of compliance with our transportation system plan, other traffic studies, nothing was really identified as being initially problematic. We recognize that downtown Beaverton, as it grows and becomes denser, that's just going to mean more people. Hopefully that's more people walking and biking and using transit, but it's also going to be more people driving. And that's something that we're going to continue to have to work with as downtown transitions from something that's less urban to something that's more urban. And that's a growing process we'll continue to work on for years to come.
I'll go next. Hey, Steve, great job on the presentation. I know firsthand how hard you worked on this project for years, so it's great to see the outcome. Quick question on the type C use.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that residential uses on the ground floor will be allowed if there is a basically a front door fronting the street. Is
Exactly.
that per unit or per project or building?
So I didn't get too into the details because I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time, but a little bit more specifically on that, each one of those types has also a percentage next to it. So type A, 80% of your frontage has to be occupied by that use. And the other 20%, you have more flexibility. So it's not a all or nothing. It's a most. And the same goes for those residential uses. So if 60%, in this case, 60% of that frontage is occupied by units that have a front door, you've met the requirement. So if it's just one unit that takes up that space and you have your front door, you've met the rule. If you've got 5 and 3 of them have front doors, you've met the rule. So there is some flex allowed to allow for some design and creativity while still making sure that we have that kind of direct engagement with the public realm.
Thank you.
I have a question, just sort of following up on the question about traffic flow. Was there any thought about enhancing transit in this downtown region? I mean, I just think about there's more people coming in. I already feel claustrophobic about how people are going to get from place to place and park and all that stuff. Is there any enhancement of transit within this downtown area?
You know, that was not within the scope of our project. Of course, we always work closely with TriMet to be able to talk about how much and what's the frequency of our service, as well as what are the facilities that are available for those utilizing it. So can we get enhanced bus shelters and better facilities like that? So that's something that, at least on the kind of the bus shelter infrastructure side, is something I think we're going to explore with the downtown streetscape plan. As far as the actual levels of service, frequency, number of bus lines and locations, that's something where we partner with TriMet. And I don't know, maybe I'll throw Dan under the bus, pardon the pun, and maybe he can touch on that a little bit with the loop, because I know TriMet's going to be a huge partner with that. So maybe Dan, maybe when it's your turn, if you want to touch on a little bit about that, because Dan's the transportation expert in the room. So maybe I'll leverage his knowledge here a little bit tonight too.
Steve, so you talked a little bit about how you coordinated with Dan and his team in the Loop project. To what extent, if any, did you coordinate with other things the city has going on, like the Downtown Equity Plan or the Climate Action Plan or other things like that?
That's a great question. So the Downtown Equity Plan picked up after we started this project. So it would have been great if we were going at the same time. But essentially what we did is when they started that effort, we met with them to talk about, okay, what can we do near the tail end of this project to at least reflect the goals and expectations of the Downtown Equity Plan. Harder to do in times like these, harder to reach communities. So we did our best to meet with minority business owners and renters. Again, hard to do when people are worried about their businesses shutting down. So I would love to say we could have done more near that tail end. The good news is that the Downtown Equity Plan is picking up when we are actually starting to do some serious implementation work, like the Loop and like the Streetscape Plan, to be able to get that in there. And I forgot, you had 2 parts to that question. I think I forgot the first part.
Oh, the other thing I'd mentioned was the Climate Action Plan.
Thank you, Climate Action Plan. Yeah, so we did incorporate some sustainability elements in the code, and we worked with our sustainability analysts to essentially double check our work to make sure we had done things correctly. So a couple of examples: on larger buildings, we require the roofs to either have a high solar reflectivity rate or have green roofs. Pedestrian pathways either need to be recycled material or shaded during the summer. So we worked in sustainability elements where we thought they were achievable. We are always balancing that regulatory barrier versus values approach. So we wanted to be really strategic and targeted about where we were requiring sustainable elements. But we think we really walked the line quite nicely. And in the climate action plan, our sustainability analyst, when he did the run through, he kind of said like, yep, you got that, you got that. So he came in towards the tail end of the project as well. And I was really pleased with the feedback we got from them on how well we were addressing the desires of the climate action plan.
Great, thank you.
I have a question too, and I don't know if it is captured in the question under the downtown equity plan, but it's in regards to whether there was any consideration of increasing diversity within the Beaverton city in this project at all.
Yeah, and that's always a little bit of a tricky issue when what our main deliverable is a regulatory document that's regulating code. While we maybe didn't focus specifically on diversity, what we wanted to make sure is that we were not regulating out opportunities for people in different socioeconomic states, people who were just starting in small businesses or micro businesses or established businesses. So we always kept an eye on, are we putting in a rule that's going to keep people out? And we actually had a couple of situations where we had consultants recommend a rule, and we took it out because we thought it was going to prohibit entry into downtown. I'll give an example. Those active ground floor use rules, where you had to have a certain use type, our consultant suggested to actually have a minimum tenant size. So not only did it have to be, we use the type A orange, whereas retail restaurant, not only did it have to be one of those uses, it also had to be 50 feet deep. And that just means a bigger tenant space, and that's higher rent. We saw that as a big barrier for micro businesses to be able to get into downtown. So we got rid of that rule to make sure that there was a lot more opportunity for smaller businesses and new businesses to be able to get into downtown. We also wanted to focus on making sure that not one development type came in, so that there would be an opportunity for a variety of owner-occupied, renter-occupied uses to be able to, again, allow for the greatest opportunity possible. So while there might not be any particular racial diversity focused on, it was really more on focusing on things and identifying issues where we were getting rid of unnecessary regulatory obstacles to allow for the greatest opportunity for access.
Steve, I have a follow-up question for you on that. What happens next with this? You said the next set is getting adopted in July, right? And then
so those active ground floor use rules, the active ground floor use rules will go into effect in July. The rest of the code itself went into effect about a month ago. So really it's now working with the community, with developers, with business owners, property owners, for them to understand and navigate the process to do whatever it is they want with their property. And ideally it's in line with the community expectations. Dan's going to talk about the loop tonight. Folks from Tyler's team are going to be working on the downtown streetscape plan, I think. Nope. Okay. Oh, it's Gene's team. Sorry. Nope. There it is. Okay.
I think it's Gene that gets to talk about that, right, Gene?
That's a head nod from Gene. So we have a couple of big projects coming up the loop's already kicked off. But yeah, for a lot of it, it's now the code's in place and now it's actually utilizing it. It was a 3-year project to learn and design and test and retest and write and rewrite. And now we're at a point where we're ready to put the code into play and help it get the community of the downtown they've been asking for frankly a long time.
Any last questions? No? All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all very
That was a
much.
really good presentation.
Really appreciate your time and your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That was terrific. Thank you for coming in. Great questions from everyone. Just to make a note, Steve came in a couple times to visit URAC over the last few years and been able to do some cool engagement activities. One of the things that the advisory committee has been asking for is, to come back and close that loop when you have those opportunities to provide input. With this project coming to a completion here, and it's an amazing amount of work and an amazing final document. One of the things I wanted to really make sure is you get a chance to hear, yeah, this project has completed, and this is what you have done with your input and with what the community has been talking to, and have the chance to keep asking questions because, like Steve said, the code is always changing and it's always being updated, and there's things that get missed, and that's okay. We'll figure it out. And Steve got to spend quite a bit of time, and he gets to go back and do some other fun planning work now, right, Steve?
That's the plan.
Thanks for coming in tonight, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next we've got Dan, who's going to talk to us about the Downtown Loop project update.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. And Tyler, I'm happy to know that projects actually do end. I am very much looking forward to who knows how much time from now coming back to you guys and closing the loop in such a good way and positive way as Steve just did. And looking forward to being as lonely as Steve probably is now after he's going to miss this this great part of his life. But like you said, Tyler, I'm sure it continues. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak and to listen to you guys. My name is Dan Turk. I'm project manager of the Loop project. Also with me is my boss, Gene Seneschal Biggs, who leads transportation planning for CDD. The last time we spoke to you about the Loop was a couple weeks after I started work. And at that point, Sarah King and Gene gave you guys a brief introduction to the project. That's almost been 6 months ago, amazing enough. We finished the work scope. We went out, issued an RFP, negotiated successfully with the consulting group. They've started their work, and they're working on the project initiation activities. So our goal this evening is to give you a little introduction with a little more detail to the project, and then to get your feedback and ideas on one particular subject as well. So let me see if I can get my presentation to work here. And Tyler, I understand we have 15 minutes, right?
That's what you have scheduled for, Dan. So
Okay.
if it takes a little more than that, we will adjust on our back end. So
okay, all right, we're planning for that. But
okay.
Of course, if people have more to say or more questions, we'll be here. All right, so we're here to talk about the Beaverton Downtown Loop project. The Loop seeks to connect Old Town and Beaverton Central, the two parts of the downtown area.
Hey, Dan, your presentation is not being shown yet.
Wait a minute. Yeah, so I skipped a step. Hold on. I didn't share my screen. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I got too excited. All right, let's see if I can. Oh, here it is. Okay. Thanks, Tyler. Let's see. Here we go. All right. I think everything is okay. Here we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. That would have been one crazy presentation. So as I said, the Loop seeks to establish a strong connection between the two main parts of the downtown, Beaverton Central to the north and the Old Town to the south, and mainly along Hall Boulevard and Southwest Watson Avenue, which are the two main one-way pairs going east-west through the downtown at present. Currently, in terms of transportation conditions as of now, people walking and biking face some safety challenges, face some delays crossing some of the cross streets. Another key element of the transportation conditions is that they're key city and regional connections that are carrying high volumes of motor vehicles. Hall and Watson themselves carry about 10,000 vehicles one way each day. Canyon and Farmington, the two main roads that they cross, carry about 30,000 vehicles in both directions per day. And not to be forgotten, there are transit facilities, including 2 MAX stops, a couple bus lines, one bus line, the 76, that goes up and down Hall and Watson, that are well located and frequent. The project goals and objectives that we've been working on, and this is something that is still a work in progress. We've gone out to various people internally to the city and with our partner agencies to talk about, well, what really should be the goals of this intervention. The first is reimagining the use of public spaces and places. The second is prioritizing safety, mobility, and connectivity for people walking and biking and taking transit. Supporting the growing residential and business community, establishing a cohesive district identity while celebrating the unique differences and what's already there. And then finally, encouraging fun with places to see people and get together throughout the day. So at this point, I'd like to stop and ask you guys, and this is the one place I promised we really would love your feedback and input and ideas. Are we missing anything here, with respect to what the goals could be or should be for an intervention of public infrastructure, looking at transportation and urban design along Hall and Watson to try to unify the downtown? What are some other goals or targets that we might have? I'd like to open it up for questions or for comments if anybody has some ideas, please.
I would think encouraging people to walk more with the you have it, connectivity for people walking.
Well, but you've highlighted, I mean, one of the goals is to make it easier for people that are walking now, but the other is to incentivize more people to walk, right? So that actually is very important. Thank you.
I would just second Rebecca's point. To me, the by far the biggest obstacle that you have with this project is the connectivity, particularly over the 2 big arterials. So I think that would be the top priority if you want to get people to walk on this.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
I'll jump up.
Absolutely agree with that as well, is having a bullet point that really focuses on traffic and either redirecting, reorganizing, trying to get folks to avoid this particular area, something language like to talk about that as one of the goals, I think would be very useful.
And you're speaking, Paula, specifically about the motorized traffic that's crossing, say, east-west? Is that what you were referring to?
As well as the traffic on Hall and Watson. It's
okay.
Not pleasant to walk on those streets right now. So how do we encourage drivers to select a different route or whatever that looks like from a transportation planning point of view?
I have a suggestion, actually. And I come from a very large city in Colombia, Bogota. And the use of pedestrian bridges actually helps solving part of these issues, because then you allow people to walk safely and then you don't actually interrupt traffic either. So maybe considering that opportunity or that possibility will help.
Okay, thank you, Osvaldo.
I would like to follow up on that comment. I don't know who's ever been to Minneapolis. They have skyways there that connect buildings across streets, partly to keep people out of the weather. And a bonus of doing something like Osvaldo is saying is we could get people out of the rain a little bit. I'd also just piggyback on what people are saying about, and I would put it a little different, getting people out of their cars. How do we do that for this area with all the implications of that? And one of the things I've seen in another city is an electric street shuttle that basically runs in these high traffic areas. And I'm just wondering kind of what you know, traffic wise and otherwise, what the relationship between these established commercial areas, Cedar Hills Crossing, Beaverton Town Center, and the downtown is, and whether you could connect those in transit with some, you know, loop shuttle that would allow people to park once, get out of their cars, and, you know, and hopefully enjoy some foot traffic as well. Thinking also of people with disabilities and elderly people who may not all want to walk those distances around downtown.
Hey, Dan, one city or case study you may want to look at is this town of Groningen in the Netherlands. At one point was the bicycle capital of the world. I lived there briefly a while back, and one of the unique features of how they were to discourage automobiles and encourage walking and biking is, one was the bicycle. They had ample bicycle parking everywhere. Secondly, they had a loop around the city. And so, like, if you were driving, you could drive in that loop, but once you came into the city, you got off the loop, you couldn't go from one end of the downtown to the other through the downtown. The only way to do that would be through the loop. And then lastly, their bicycle lanes were actually grade separated. So not just like how we traditionally have it in America, you have your automobile lane, bicycle lane, and the sidewalks. They would actually have some type of plan or some type of separator in between the street and the bicycle lane. And it actually made people feel safer. So just a couple of things to be mindful of. And I'll put it in the chat too, Groningen. So it's a great example.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Okay, I'm going to sort of pose a question this way. You know, when you read these goals and objectives, I think I'd almost want you all to think about when you picture what this loop, how Holland Watson in the future might be in our downtown. And you all have thought about downtown a lot in your role as the URAC. You know, what's the look and feel of that place? And do these goals and objectives help us get to that look and feel? Or is there something we're missing? Is there something we're not thinking about here? And I've heard you talk about different modes. I've heard you talk about different people's particular needs. Anything else kind of resonate when you think about these goals and objectives? Because we're going to use these to really help us start to steer, once we get into alternatives and start to look at design solutions. We're going to be using these to look back and say, how are we doing? Are we going to meet these goals that we've set out for the project?
I think the goals are,
Eric?
Go ahead, Andy.
Sorry, I think the goals are very thorough. I think they cover everything nicely. As already mentioned, I think the biggest challenge is kind of getting people from north of Canyon and Farmington to south. But no, I think the goals really cover it well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy.
Gene, I think last time that you guys were here, somebody mentioned the idea of some sort of, whether it's a sign or design or something that makes it clear to people, even as they're driving on the big streets, that you are now in the, you know, what, downtown Beaverton, or you guys are now in the loop. Just something to signify that this area is different than the rest of downtown Beaverton. This area is special. This is an area you'd want to spend some time. So just some way of making that visually clear to people who don't know anything about the area.
Eric, you know, that is that's one of the things that's been reiterated to me. The handful of citizens that have called to talk to me about the project, they've often said, I don't know what the downtown is. Is the downtown over by the library? And then, you know, some of the, you know, the establishments down here, when they talk to people about where they are, they don't necessarily say they're downtown. They give them a street address or a crossing. So we'd like to change that.
It's almost like you're building a shopping district where you need to have an anchor. You need to have something that's gonna, in my head, I was envisioning when I'm in Europe and you go to the butcher, and then you go to the baker, and then you go to the produce stand, and then you go to buy a, you know, whatever miscellaneous kitchen gadget, and you're going to these different shops. And so when you go shopping, you go to this district and it has all these services, and you go to these different stores to get them. Which is a very different way than we deliver services in America. We go to the one size fits all kind of thing. So I'm more curious about what the vision is right now in terms of creating that district identity. What is going to be the draw? What's going to be the character of this place that's going to make people go, oh, cool, this is different. And I want to go there, park and walk around for a bit and pick up this and that.
So yeah, this is very interesting. You guys are raising a lot of very good points and have some good ideas with respect to the anchor. We have a couple areas that already could serve as an anchor, including the new arts facility to the north. We have the old downtown, we have Restaurant Row, and this project is, I think, the main goal or the immediate goal of this project is to somehow connect those two so that they're not just viewed upon as just disparate locations, but part of something bigger that has its own identity. But within that identity, each of the areas doesn't lose their particular character that is special. And that's challenging. It's easy to write a sentence and say that, but actually have it execute like that and achieve both of those goals is challenging.
One of the things that I've appreciated that appeared here in the last few years in Beaverton is the maps that are posted around town. And I think that's a way to, in a very concrete way, allow people to visualize where the downtown area is to, have those maps at various locations and on that map demarcate this area.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that we should probably move on. I have a few more slides that you guys might find of interest. Before we go on, I do want to thank you guys for your comments about the goals and also some ideas about things to look into. For me, hopefully you'll find out this about me in terms of my personal and also professional life. I believe, it's important to have to be direct and honest in terms of so people have the right expectations. Some of the things that you guys have mentioned, I think, are good ideas that need to be looked into. And say the pedestrian bridges or the transit shuttle. I would just like to let you guys know, this is the process. This is a situation where the product is really going to be driven by a good process, and we're reaching out to a lot of people to get ideas along the way. And, we're going to follow what people are interested in seeing, what people think is a good idea. But at the same time, this particular study is dimensioned, has to be dimensioned. You have to put a budget and you have to have, you have to hire a certain group of people. The interventions that we're looking at that would be likely the short to medium term interventions would be something within the right of way, dealing with urban design, and dealing with the use of the space in the existing streets. Some of the things that you guys mentioned may fall into the category of something that we would need to study further, and maybe something that would be we would transition into it. But I hesitate to say that. It might be something where we find that we really, we have an appetite, we have a support for really doing more intensive things sooner than later that are good ideas. So we're keeping an open mind, but in all honesty, just want to let you guys know our expectation is we're going to be looking at least during what we're doing here and the study that we're doing here is, like I said, some interventions in the existing right-of-way and urban design and transportation, the use of space. So let me move forward here. Thank you. This is very interesting, guys. And thank you for bringing up all of this is very useful to us because, we'd rather talk among friends here before, we're out talking to the public and, things are complicated sometimes. So where are we in the process? We have just begun the planning phase, which is the creation of the urban design and transportation plan for the Beaverton Loop. After that is done, we would move into the design, the engineering, and the construction, of course, when we would be able to get funding for that. The product of this planning phase is plan and cross-section drawings, really enough that gives us an idea, a specific idea of what it's going to look like, what the solution is going to look like in terms of what's within the right-of-way, block by block, up and down Hall and Watson. It's very important to have those planning level cost estimates so that we can start thinking about what what the dimensions of this initiative could be, or the phasing of this initiative. And then with respect to phasing, it's critical to look at the implementation strategy. What is it that we want to do immediately? What is it that we can do in the short term? What are things that, we're going to leave for the longer term? And then also what are the things that we can study more and look at differently. In terms of the project schedule, we find ourselves near the end of project initiation activities, and these mainly focused on finalizing our engagement plan and other project kickoff activities. Like I said, it's very important to us that we're able to get out there and engage with a broad number of people, and especially to hear voices that really have been underrepresented in the case of capital projects. And that is a very, very big priority of ours, not just to gain support widespread for the project, but to improve the design of it. We're halfway through the inventory and analysis, which is looking at our existing plans and policies with the downtown area, the existing conditions, and then within existing conditions, looking at what are some opportunities and constraints that we have to work with for the next phase, which is alternative design. But before we get there, we need to look at what the project vision, goals, and objectives are by reaching out to a wide array of people to see what this project should be focusing on and prioritizing. The last task group is the most intensive, which is using all the information that we've gotten from the other phases to design a handful of alternatives, take them out, evaluate them, get people's feedback, build support towards the selection of a preferred alternative, and then have that plan adopted by the city council so that we can move forward. The consultant team that we have on board, we feel is a good one. We've enjoyed working with them so far. Walker Macy's the lead. They work in landscape architecture and urban design. DKS and Nelson Nygaard are looking at the interplay between urban design and transportation planning. And Communitas is leading with the community engagement, which is a critical piece. So far, in terms of community engagement activities, we've sent out over 5,000 postcards to downtown residents introducing the project, and we've sent letters to the owners of adjacent properties. We've gone out and made, I'd say, a half a dozen presentations to different city boards and community organizations. Up until now, the experience has been very positive, very supportive, and most importantly, people have brought some good questions and concerns to the table that really have gotten us thinking and have improved already the quality of what we're doing and how it's focused. We've launched a website, which I would encourage you to take a look at, Downtown Loop. And within that website, you can sign up for a mailing list, and this will be updated every project phase at the very least to keep everybody up to date. And we've been working very hard on the recruitment of a community advisory committee of different citizens, and we're hoping to have that official at some point soon. And like I said, we've conducted an engagement audit, which is looking at all of the engagement that's been done by the city for other projects to see if there's some lessons learned that we can use in our project, and then fine-tuning the community engagement plan, which is a key piece of everything that we're going to do in every phase. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Sorry, I think we went over a little bit, but if you guys have any other questions, concerns, ideas, please, we're here to listen. And Jean, if you have something else that you'd like to add that I missed, please do so.
Hi there. So this isn't necessarily a question, but I just kind of wanted to go back real quick if we have time to. I think Jean, you said how you imagine this loop looking, and one thing that really comes to mind, I think that is fascinating, given the times we're in with COVID and all the exceptions we've had to make, and all bringing on more outdoor dining. It's been very interesting to see how lively it's actually kind of made the downtown area, especially first in Watson. Given the outdoor dining street that's dedicated to that, and all of the buildings that have kind of been able to come out. So although that's been out of necessity, it's been, I think, incredible to see what it's done. So I think anything that can be done to bring more, more folks out so that people passing by see that this is a lively area and see that this is something that they want to, be part of, because I think that's a huge piece of getting more people to, whether they're just driving by that one time, they see that there's people outside, see activity, they're more likely to remember that and come back and, participate. So that, along with anything you can do to, potentially slow down the traffic going down, Watson and Hall, so that people can kind of take in what's going on around them, and once again have that impression kind of stick. I think those are things that I imagine or I would like to see.
Thank you, Paige. I think you bring up a very good point, because similar to the point that was brought up with respect to walking and biking. It's not just that you want to make it more pleasant and safer for the people that are doing it right now. You want to incentivize more of a use. So the same thing with respect to activity downtown. You want to make it more pleasant for the people that are already downtown in activities. But really, your end goal is to have more people come downtown.
Right.
So I think we should be more direct in that. I wouldn't say indirect. I'd say it's just another level of the goal, which is really where we're trying to head.
Yeah. So anything potentially, to extend those sidewalks that are there, that you could have more, cafe seating or things like that, or anything just to have more lively people engaging with each other outside, would be fantastic to see.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Paige.
Just to add on to that point about getting people downtown, you had a list of the places that you've gone, the various boards and committees. I know we'd love to talk to you at the BCCI, just in terms of, hey, what does it look like for people like myself who live outside of downtown? What's going to make it more attractive for us to come downtown, and what are the things that are going to bring people in from all over the city who not necessarily live downtown or can walk downtown?
I think that's a really good point, Eric, because what we're trying to do, Beaverton is transitioning to a certain extent from a more suburban setting where there are multiple centers to one in which the downtown is not just one of the multiple centers, but one that is special in other ways. And I think getting people to understand that and appreciate that and have that actually begin functioning is a key, not just for this project, but this project is supporting that greater goal.
And I would just add one point to that, which is when I think about downtown, I think about my parents who've been just avid downtown Beaverton people, but really a lot of that stems from the farmers market. And so if you can extend a captive audience like that, so my parents are in their mid 70s, how would they get from the farmers market with their goods to a baker or whatever that they might also want to stop by that's a few blocks down the street? And so what are those types of considerations to leverage the folks that you already have that are using it as a destination place? So I have one thing I want to do, I go here. How do I extend that experience beyond that one destination and make it comfortable?
That's very good, because I think you can easily focus on, looking at the constraints and trying to alleviate the constraints. For example, looking at the crossing at Canyon and Farmington, and that may be limited, at least through the means that we're looking at the present. It's equally important to leverage the strengths that you have, and the farmers market certainly is a strength. You get a lot of people down there, and like you said, you'd love to extend, and you have them there. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
And I'm just noticing Oswaldo wrote something in the chat about we need a summer bike through that loop with lots of shops, Saturday market style or night market style. Oswaldo, do you mean like a bike ride? Do you mean bike lanes? Do you need like an event?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Portland adopted this a couple of years ago, and it was actually after, again, an event that happens in Bogota. And it started several years ago, where every Sunday, they would actually block some of the streets and they would from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. It was exclusively for people who were biking, skating, walking, just jogging, anything. And along the route or the loop or whatever the street was, there was an opportunity for people to set up booths like like the Saturday market or the Beaverton night market. And it would just promote exactly what you guys were just talking about, which is just going from the Saturday market and then going to a coffee shop, or just buying an empanada from Colombia or something, that you don't see every day. And then you will have a chance to actually, I know the weather here, doesn't help all year round, but in the summer months, it could be definitely a destination point.
Oswaldo, I have to say, we should definitely, there's a lot of good examples to follow, both in terms of infrastructure and then ideas such as you were talking about. I have to share that I have had the pleasure of being in Bogota. Unfortunately, the times that I was in Bogota were pre-Transmilenio and pre some of these bike lanes in the mid 1990s. And I was going from meeting to meeting, trying to drum up business for my consulting firm. And every single time, traffic would be so slow that I would have to get out of the car to walk the rest of the way. This was a whole day of that. It was incredible, and it's wonderful what Bogota has been able to accomplish. People don't realize how far they've come.
Hey, Dan, there's a little bit of traffic on here about the MAX and attracting those riders who are passing through. I think that was a good comment and interesting thought that I haven't thought about. But, sure, we've got our canyons of Canyon TV Highway and Farmington and the vehicles that are going through, but we've got lots of people on MAX that are passing through and trying to track them as they cross the loop. As a great point, Jerome.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Jerome. Yeah. That's right. It's another strength. We have people coming through. I mean, this is a major MAX line, and, the connection between the transit center or the stop here in front of City Hall isn't as strong as it could be to Old Town.
Well, lots of great ideas, folks. I'm glad we sparked some imagination.
Well, Gene, I was thinking about starting a rickshaw service. So, just to get a little exercise. So I think that'd be interesting, I have to say.
Great.
Dan, Gene, thank you so much. I think your 15 minutes went to 30, which was well worth it. So like I've told you in the past, we've got a great committee here that love to share their thoughts and ask good questions. So you're welcome to come back anytime. And as you start planning out your schedule and just for everybody's sake, Alan was sitting there quiet, but TVF&R is actually on Dan's technical advisory committee. So we've got good representation from even Alan's team in here. So thanks,
and
everyone.
Tyler, just to finish up, I'd forgotten, we will be coming back to you guys both to inform you of the progress that is being made in these steps, and also to get your feedback and ideas on some critical steps in a timely manner so that it can be incorporated. So thank you guys, really appreciate it. Thank you for making your evening a little longer on our account.
Well worth it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Aren't you next?
I don't know, Chair. You let me know.
Oh, yeah, you're next.
All
but
right.
You have no time left, so I don't know what you want to do.
Well, I'm going to do my real quick thing here, and then I'm going to pass it over to Chase. But I wanted to give you kind of the quick financial annual report thing. I've highlighted some things, but this is the annual report that was given by our treasurer to the Bureau board on this past Tuesday. And just kind of taking a look here, We had an ending fund balance of $45 million, just over $45 million. I'm going to skip over and get into a little more detail into the report. Eric, I know you're interested in this, so go to the BURA Granicus site and get the agenda. Alan, you're probably interested in this as well. Some of the other folks might be wanting more information than what I'm giving you tonight, but you can ask me or I can guide you to more information. I think this is kind of an interesting area where we bring down the increase in the assessed value. $38 million was increased in the district itself, so that's the taxable assessed value, and 289 million since the time that we froze the base back in 2011. So think of our boundary, think of whatever our assessed value was at that particular moment in time back in 2011. It has increased almost $300 million since that point in time. So that's total double thumbs up. And just this past year increased almost 38 million. We spent this during that fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, spent $11 million on the parking garage. And we're spending more than that, but that's what we spent up to that point. $2.5 million on property acquisition. So we bought 6 different tax lots during that same period of time. 3.2. Yep, go ahead, Josh.
Sorry to interrupt. Quick question. Is that the 2.5 million on new property acquisitions? Is that right on Beaver Dam, or is that a different 6 properties?
You know, it's a good question, Josh. There's some other properties. I think Beaver Dam was, there's certain ones on Beaver Dam that were acquired and certain ones that were acquired prior to this previous year. I can give you a breakdown. I know that the BURA bill breaks it down a little bit, but I'd have to give you direct, and we can do that later on, if that's okay. 3.2 million on development feasibility assistance, tenant improvement program, business storefront improvement, and all those things that Megan's team has been working on in the Old Town for the storefront and TI programs. So that's, you know, and also pre-development grants that Janine distributes, and it includes some other things as well, but that's one of those allocations. As you may recall, we took out a bond for $55 million just prior to the end of that fiscal year. And that's why we have that $47 million or so. And then part of that $55 million, we paid the line of credit that we had prior to. Now, one of the things that we're starting to already talk about is to go out for another line of credit for our next chunk of change, as that $55 million doesn't last as long as we might think in reality of $55 million. I'm going to skip over this and get to, and my apologies for going so fast, but want to send this off to Chase here as quickly as possible. As you may recall, $150 million is our maximum indebtedness for the agency. And as of maximum indebtedness as of 6/30/2020, we have almost just over $67 million. So that means we have almost $83 million remaining on our maximum indebtedness. So it's a 30-year term, and you can see we're almost halfway there. And so a couple of things to think about, and Alan's probably excited about this, is that we may end up closing up this district sooner than that 30 years. And our dollar can go further earlier than it can later. And so because of the district has done so well with this assessed value, and our increment has increased so much in these 10 years, we're hoping that we'll continue to move forward pretty quickly and get the money out. And then we'll have to start thinking about other things to help our community. Okay, that's all I wanted to share, or at least the abbreviated form of sharing with you tonight on the annual report.
Tyler, a couple quick questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
You said that I don't remember the number, it was $289 million or whatever that the taxable value had increased. What's the total spend up to this point from BURA?
So we have, whoops. So our maximum indebtedness has been 67 million. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all on credit or on a bond, because we have our tax increment as well. And just for for everybody who's in the room here, we haven't had this kind of financial discussion for a while. Is in fact, I'm going to share with you a great graphic that between Josh and Chase have worked out. We'll talk about tax increment a little bit. So TIF, that's kind of the whole construct of what an urban renewal agency is all about. Essentially this line, let's see if I can get a pointer. I don't think I can. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So this point here, when we established the agency, the assessed value of all those properties in the district were set, and we have not increased that tax assessment back to all of our special districts or the city or the county. And so anything that has increased in value of those properties sends up this trajectory. All this area between that trajectory and our base stays with BURA. It doesn't go to the special districts. It doesn't go to the city. That additional tax revenue stays with BURA. TVF&R, they still get what they got back in 2011 from our district, from our boundaries of the district. Everything else goes to BURA, so we're able to use that. But that all fits into the 150 million maximum indebtedness. Not just the bond, not just the line of credit, but it also goes to that 150, Eric.
So I guess, Tyler, what I'm trying to get at is we know how much the assessed value has increased. How much spending, like over the period of the urban renewal agency, how much money has been spent up to this point to, obviously we know it's not a direct connection, but X dollars was spent to lead to this much of an increase in assessed value, kind of just an ROI.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. You're trying to get to the rate of return. Let me get back to you. I'm not the treasurer, and I don't claim to be, but I am going to manage getting you the right responses. So if you're okay with that, I will send an email to everybody so I can respond appropriately and on the fly.
Okay.
Or not on the fly.
The question I would tack on to that is how does that measure up with what you had expected going in? And it sounds like if things are going faster than expected, then maybe we're doing better than we thought.
That is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for those good questions. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Chase.
Absolutely. I'll be quick on this one. I'll encourage you all, if you get a chance, go back, look at the meeting materials, those pages further down beyond the agenda in the minutes, you will find the BURA monthly area project report. A lot of exciting projects going on. I think it's generally around 11 pages, so there's good stuff to dig into. Once again, the guide is look for the items in bold. That's the new items there that we really wanted to highlight for you all. Quick coverage, Hyatt House Hotel, right across from the Beaverton building, looking to be completed by the end of winter 2021. So coming up real soon. It's already got the temp occupancy. Take a look at it. It's really amazing driving down there, living down there, walking down there, if you haven't been there recently. Open air Beaverton, that's for everybody dining outside, putting seating and street seating in the parking spaces, as well as the First Street Commons. It's getting a lot of really great attention. We just heard recently from businesses down there that they had basically maximum allowed occupancy, and they were having to turn people away from sitting out there to meet the health regulations. So it's very popular with a lot of businesses right now. It seems to be working well. we're looking at what the long-term sort of solutions and goals will look like for that, how it might need to adapt if it's a longer-term program. And there will be some communication going out next couple months. Storefront and tenant improvement, grants are open, applications are open, should be closing pretty soon, a couple of months. Also, there's a new person that you all will meet named Katie Rispoli. She's helping out Megan Bronston on these programs. Bank of Beaverton building, right there, very important corner. Had a tenant selected, and they're doing renovations now for a German themed bar restaurant, 99 taps. It's called Loyal Legion. There's one on the east side, and they're going to be doing a lot of outdoor dining in that parking lot space there. So it's going to be a really awesome spot to walk by and get that restaurant row kind of energy going on. You were talking, someone asked a question about the projects that Steve Regner worked along with when he was doing the downtown design project. One of the ones that got mentioned, but want to circle back to, was parking. And he worked a lot with the parking manager on those requirements, as well as now the project that's been kicking off the downtown parking strategy. There's more information there about how that's going to be coming to downtown and be looking at how we use those spaces and have parking available for businesses and residents. Downtown equity strategy, you'll get some more updates soon, but the RFP is out. We're getting a lot of attention. We had 2 meetings with folks who were looking to potentially apply, including one kind of like quick round dating meeting where people were meeting other consultants to try to form up in a team and telling about what their great strengths were for their organization. The Verso on 2nd and Lombard. Tyler, do you want to mention really quick what we might be hearing from them and what's going on there?
Yeah, we're trying to get the owners of the Verso to come in to do a virtual walkthrough with you instead of, actual walking into the building like we did over the Rise Central. Possibly March. They weren't quite ready for February, so they're doing a bunch of video and photos, and so we're hoping that that's going to be ready for our March meeting. If not, we'll bump it to April. But we're trying to figure out ways of getting you inside of these projects.
Yep, really want to have eyes on for you all on that. That was one of the comments I heard a lot on the survey, and I'll be sharing those results after this meeting with you all, was getting more site walks, more site visits, even if it's virtual, something we want to do. Milliken Way extension. There is a project going on that will work to extend and improve the Milliken Way corridor. And the project chart has been approved. There'll be an RFQ coming out soon. The Railroad Quiet Zone is chugging along, pun intended, and they're meeting, folks on the project team are meeting with the Federal Railroad admin, trying to figure out more about what requirements and best guidelines and things that can be done there. And last but not least, a very big project that kicked off was the Downtown Stormwater Sub-Basin Strategy. It's a mouthful, but it's an important one. It kind of goes along a lot with the development work we've been talking about. How do we make the stormwater sub-basin ready and follow all the regulations and requirements required to be able to build what we want to build there? Tyler, do you have anything else you want to say about that one?
Nope, more to come though. You'll be hearing more and more about that as we progress. So
that's a big infrastructure one. Any questions from you all?
I have one question, Chase. So one development thing that I've heard about and read actually a little bit about was Breakside Brewery coming. So do you know anything about that? And I'm curious what the location is because I've been trying to figure it out. It looks like it's kind of where the Vault Vintage Boutique is right now. Anything you have to share on that?
Yeah, kind of. That's generally the location that Breakside is considering. They have not closed on the property yet, so I'm a little reluctant to give too much. But there has been talk in in the media or social media, and I think it's kind of public.
There was something I think on there, either published by them or I heard about it from another restaurant downtown talking about things, and then Googled it, and then I found something that was public, so that's why I was intrigued of what the status was.
Yeah, that's the general area page. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
they haven't actually closed. Gotcha.
Yeah, as of last week, they had not, and And then there's also the bakery blocks, which was another big one with Binary Brewery, along with a couple other restaurants that they're looking at bringing into the bakery
Awesome.
blocks.
And a coffee roaster there as well.
Right. That was in the mailer that went out. I forget what it's called, but there was a mailer that went out that mentioned CC Coffee, I think it was. That's another one that's in Portland. So has that actually closed, and is that down, like you said, in the Broadway?
Right, exactly. So Broadway and Hall, where Beaverton Bakery used to be.
Awesome.
And so you see all that work that's happening at Beaverton Bakery if you happen to come downtown, which I know Paige probably walks by there almost every day, or she used to anyway.
Used to every day, yeah.
So they've been doing the remodel of the Beaverton Bakery, and which includes the brewery, the coffee roaster, and a restaurant.
Tyler, just to confirm, the brick side will be at the old vault building?
In that general location, Josh, I'm not going to really go into the specific location. No, that's okay. Just for, this is a public video that gets out there. By the time it gets posted, it's probably going to be, official. But that's general location, general area.
Thank you. Oh, on another note, would it be possible to get a copy of Steve Regner's presentation?
Absolutely. Yep, I've asked both him and Dan for the slides, and I will be sending those out to you all in the follow-up email to this.
Yeah, and if you notice on Chase's agenda got sent out, there's hot links to both of those projects as well. And a plug for the BURA board, last past Tuesday, Director Cheryl Tweedy provided a presentation on kind of 2021 and our work plan and the things that are going on that Chase was the primary author of. And so take a look at that if you want. We thought about bringing it in, but I think she spent like 30 minutes going through it. So we knew we didn't have time to share it with you, but you're more than welcome to go back and look at the presentation or listen in on Granicus.
Okay, any last questions? No? My vote is less beer, more bakeries. That's all I'm saying. So we need somebody to move to approve the October 2021 minutes.
I move to approve the October 2020 minutes.
Any second?
I'll second the motion.
Excellent. Everybody raise your hand if you approve. It passes. And we are done. So somebody has to move for that, right? Or can I just end it? I always forget.
You just go ahead and end it, Rebecca.
All right, we're done. Sweet. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good month.
for coming.
It's a great meeting. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good.
Ooh, produce stands. Good point.
Oh, yeah. Good. Paula always has a good idea. Hey, Paula, can you stick around after